Professor Zexai of the Andromedian Institute of Xenobiology adjusted his biosuit's environmental controls for the third time, watching the blue-green marble grow larger through the observation deck's crystalline viewport. Behind him, his colleagues from across the galaxy chatted excitedly about their upcoming field study vacation to the quaint little world called Earth. "Really, Zexai," chuckled Dr. Mothera, her gossamer wings fluttering with amusement. "You're overthinking this. The pre-survey data is clear: primitive bipedal species, standard oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, single moon system. It's practically a resort planet compared to the hellscapes we usually study." Zexai's four eyes blinked in sequence, a nervous habit from his homeworld of Kepler 442b, where the gravitational field was a gentle 0.3 Earth standard. "The gravitational reading still concerns me. 9.8 meters per second squared seems excessive." "Excessive?" laughed Commander Vorth, his cybernetic implants gleaming as he polished his ceremonial plasma rifle. The Martian colonial defense veteran had seen action across 3 star systems, his body a patchwork of combat modifications and life support augmentations. "I've fought in gravity wells twice that strong. These Earth dwellers are probably fragile as crystal moths." Dr. Kreesun, the expedition's geologist from the high-gravity world of Wolf 359c, nodded sagely. "Indeed, my people evolved under 2.1 Earth standard gravity. This will feel like floating." His rocky, crystalline hide gleamed under the ship's bioluminescent lighting. "If anything, we might have to be careful not to accidentally leap into their stratosphere." The youngest member of their team, Dr. Lyss Andra from the gas giant Proxima B's floating cities, pressed her nose against the viewport. Her gossamer-light form, adapted for the near-zero gravity of her birth clouds, practically vibrated with excitement. "Look at all that solid matter. And the electromagnetic readings. Their species actually generates artificial electromagnetic fields on a planetary scale. Such an adorable attempt at civilization." Admiral Khan, their expedition leader, raised one of his 6 arms for attention. His species, the proud Centaurians, had dominated 3 star systems through superior technology and what they considered enlightened colonialism. Listen well, colleagues. This is more than a research expedition. It's a cultural exchange mission. Earth species has recently achieved faster-than-light communication, which means they're ready for contact with the Galactic Consortium. We're here to evaluate their readiness for membership. Membership. Vorth snorted, causing small puffs of recycled atmosphere to escape his breathing apparatus. "Have you seen their military technology? They still use chemical propellants and kinetic weapons. Their most advanced war machines would be museum pieces on any civilized world." "Their biological adaptations are impressive, though," Zexai murmured, scrolling through xenobiological data on his holopad. "High bone density, robust cardiovascular systems, redundant organ systems, almost as if they evolved for extreme survival conditions." "Primitive overengineering," dismissed Dr. Mothera. "When you don't have proper technology, biology compensates with crude brute force solutions." The ship's AI announced their descent into Earth's atmosphere in its melodious galactic standard. Through the viewport, the planet's surface rushed up to meet them. Vast blue oceans, swirling cloud formations that dwarfed entire star systems, and continents that stretched beyond their sensors' range. "Initiating standard atmospheric entry," reported their pilot, a symbiotic AI-organic hybrid from the Vega system. "Surface gravity confirmed at 9.81 meters per second squared. Atmospheric composition: 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, trace gases. Temperature range curious. Extreme variations across planetary surface, from 184 Kelvin to 331 Kelvin. "That can't be right," frowned Kreesun. "What kind of civilized species tolerates such temperature extremes?" "The same species that evolved under this crushing gravity, apparently," muttered Zexai, watching the gravity readings with growing unease. Their landing site was a cleared field in what their pre-contact intelligence indicated was called Montana, apparently named for the massive geological upheavals that dominated the landscape. As their ship settled onto the primitive concrete landing pad prepared by the human government, the team made final preparations. "Remember," Admiral Khan addressed them, "we represent the pinnacle of galactic civilization. These humans have never encountered beings of our advancement. Let's show them what enlightenment looks like." The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss, and Dr. Lyss Andra stepped out first, eager to experience solid ground for the first time in her existence. She collapsed immediately. The sound was unlike anything they'd ever heard, not the clean snap of breaking crystal or the dull thud of standard material failure, but a wet, organic crunch as her gossamer bones, designed for floating in gas giant atmospheres, tried to support her body weight under Earth's brutal gravitational acceleration. Lyss. HFY rushed forward, then stumbled as his own legs, accustomed to Kepler, 442b's gentle pull, betrayed him. Each step felt like someone had attached lead weights to his limbs. His biosuit servos whined in protest, already drawing power at triple their normal rate. Dr. Mothera attempted to flutter to Lyss Andra's aid, but her delicate wings, evolved for the thin atmospheres of her homeworld, could barely generate lift in Earth's dense air. She crashed down beside her colleague, wing membranes tearing on the rough concrete. "Medical emergency." Commander Vorth barked into his communicator, but the device sparked and died. He looked at his equipment readouts in disbelief. Electromagnetic interference is off the charts. How do these primitives function with this much background radiation? Even Kree Sun, supposedly adapted to high gravity, found himself struggling. His crystalline structure, designed for the predictable crushing force of Wolf 359C's steady 2.1 G, couldn't adapt to the strange variations in Earth's field. The way it seemed to pull differently at different altitudes, the subtle but measurable variations caused by the planet's rotation and the gravitational influences of its oversized moon. "Something's wrong," he gasped, his voice harmonics distorted by the atmospheric pressure. "This isn't just high gravity, it's chaotic gravity. Random variations, tidal effects, rotational stresses. How does anything survive here?" Admiral Khan, his 6 arms struggling to coordinate movement in the heavy field, activated his emergency beacon. "Expedition to base ship. We have multiple casualties. Requesting immediate medical evacuation." The response crackled with static. "Admiral, we're reading massive atmospheric disturbances. Some kind of localized weather phenomenon approaching your position. Visibility dropping rapidly." They looked up to see what the humans called a thunderstorm approaching, a towering wall of churning atmosphere that rose kilometers into the sky, crackling with electrical discharges that dwarfed their ship's entire power output. "That's not possible," whispered Dr. Mothera from where she lay crumpled on the ground. "No planet can sustain such atmospheric violence. The energy requirements alone would tear apart any stable ecosystem." But even as she spoke, local Earth fauna continued about their business, seemingly unconcerned. A small mammal, their briefings had called it a squirrel, bounded across the landing pad, covering in seconds distances that would require significant mechanical assistance for most galactic species. Its movements were so quick and precise that their enhanced visual systems struggled to track it. "Look at its bone structure," HFY wheezed, his biosuit's medical scanners working overtime. "Density readings are off the scale. And its cardiovascular system, it's running at pressure levels that would burst our reinforced circulatory systems." The first raindrops began to fall. At first, they seemed like normal precipitation, until they hit. Each drop struck with the force of a small projectile, driven by atmospheric pressure differentials that their weather prediction models couldn't account for. The water itself seemed to be moving too fast, falling too hard, as if the very atmosphere was actively hostile to their presence. "Into the ship," Khan ordered, But it was too late. The storm hit with the fury of a natural disaster. Winds that could have powered their starship's engines howling across the landscape. Lightning struck the ground around them with enough electrical energy to run a small city, while temperature swings of 30 degrees occurred within minutes. And through it all, they could see native Earth life not just surviving, but thriving. Plants bent, but didn't break in winds that would shatter their buildings. Animals sought shelter, but showed no signs of the terror that was overwhelming the galactic visitors. Even the humans, primitive, unaugmented humans, moved through this catastrophe with casual competence that bordered on the supernatural. Dr. Lys Sandra's delicate gas giant physiology began shutting down systems to conserve energy, her body entering a protective coma as Earth's environment overwhelmed her biological processes. Mothera's wing tears were getting worse as the wind caught her damaged membranes and stretched them beyond their breaking point. "This is impossible," Tkon gasped into his communicator. "No species could evolve under these conditions. The energy requirements, the structural stresses, the atmospheric violence. It would require biological engineering beyond our current capabilities." Through the storm, they saw a figure approaching, a human female, walking upright through the chaos that had reduced the galaxy's finest scientific minds to helpless victims. She wore minimal protection, just some kind of primitive fabric covering and a transparent face shield. In her hands was a medical kit. "Are you folks okay?" she called out in perfectly translated galactic standard, her voice carrying easily through the atmospheric turmoil. "We saw your ship come down and figured you might need help with the weather." She moved with the fluid grace of a being perfectly adapted to her environment, each step precisely calculated to maintain balance in the shifting gravitational stresses caused by the storm, her body automatically compensating for wind shear that would tear apart their biosuits. How are you walking?" wheezed Commander Vorth, his combat modifications struggling to maintain basic life support. The human smiled, a facial expression that seemed somehow predatory despite its apparent friendliness. "Walking? Honey, this is barely a drizzle. Wait till you see what we call real weather." As she knelt beside Lys Sandra's crumpled form, her movements demonstrated a biological efficiency that their most advanced robotics couldn't match. Her hands, unaugmented by any visible technology, performed medical assessments with a precision that rivaled their quantum-enhanced diagnostic equipment. "Your friend here is built for low-gravity, low-pressure environments," she observed, her primitive medical scanner somehow penetrating their advanced biosuit shielding. "What's her home world like?" "Proxima b," Tkon managed. "Gas giant. 0.03 Earth standard gravity." The human's eyebrows rose. "Oh, honey, you brought a cloud dancer to a rockhopper's world." She activated a device they didn't recognize. "Don't worry, we've got a hyperbaric chamber set up for exactly this kind of situation. Happens more often than you'd think." "Happens more often?" Zexai struggled to process this information through his suit's failing cognitive enhancers. "You mean other galactic species have tried to visit Earth unprepared?" "Oh, yeah, all the time." The human's smile widened. "See, most folks assume that because we're a young species, we must be living on an easy world. They figure if primitive humans can survive here, it must be a vacation planet." She gestured around at the storm that was still pummeling them with enough force to register as artillery bombardment on their sensors. "What they don't realize is that we're not surviving here despite being primitive. We're surviving here because this planet made us into something that can't be primitive and still breathe." Another human appeared through the storm, this one male, carrying equipment that looked suspiciously like it had been designed specifically for rescuing over-evolved galactic academics from their own hubris. "How many this time, Sarah?" he called out, his voice somehow carrying perfectly through atmospheric interference that was jamming their communications. 6. Various species, various gravity backgrounds. Looks like a standard first contact science team. She was already working on LYSS Andra with a competence that made their quantum-enhanced medical training look clumsy. We'll need the full-spectrum life support setup. Already warming it up, the male human replied. Transport's on the way. Through the storm, they could see lights approaching. Ground vehicles that moved across the chaotic terrain with an ease that defied their understanding of mechanical engineering. The vehicles themselves looked primitive, held together with what appeared to be simple metallic alloys and chemical energy systems. But they worked. In conditions that had disabled their quantum-enhanced starship systems, these crude machines functioned perfectly. I don't understand, Dr. Creason managed through his suit's failing translation matrix. How are your technologies functioning in these electromagnetic conditions? Sarah, still working on LYS Sandra's failing life support, chuckled. Electromagnetic conditions? You mean the lightning? She glanced up at a bolt that would have overloaded their ship's shields. That's just static discharge. Our stuff is hardened for way worse than this. Worse. Tkan's voice cracked. Solar flares, magnetic pole reversals, gamma-ray bursts, asteroid impacts. The male human listed casually while setting up some kind of field generator around their group. Earth throws tantrums that make this storm look like a quiet afternoon. The transport arrived. A wheeled vehicle that looked like it had been built in someone's garage, but moved with the precision of a military craft. Its occupants moved with the same fluid efficiency as Sarah, their bodies demonstrating adaptations that were becoming terrifyingly clear to the galactic visitors. These weren't primitive beings who had gotten lucky on an easy world. These were apex predators who had been forged by a planet that treated galactic standard catastrophes as weather. Let's get your folks somewhere more comfortable, Sarah said, her tone still friendly, but now carrying undertones that made Commander Vortha's combat instincts scream warnings. We've got a whole facility set up for situations like this. Climate-controlled, adjustable gravity, medical support. Think of it as a halfway house for species that aren't quite ready for the full Earth experience. As they were loaded into the transport, each of them requiring specialized life support that the humans seemed to have readily available, a horrible realization began to dawn on the expedition members. Earth wasn't a primitive world that had gotten lucky with a successful species. Earth was a crucible that had forged a species capable of treating galactic standard disasters as minor inconveniences. And now they were completely at the mercy of beings whose idea of hospitality involved building specialized facilities for the inevitable casualties of their planet's everyday existence. Through the transport's transparent aluminum windows, they watched the storm continue to rage while humans went about their daily business, walking through atmospheric violence that had reduced them to helpless victims. Their primitive technologies functioning flawlessly in conditions that had crippled quantum-enhanced systems. "Sweet nebulae," whispered Dr. Mothera as her damaged wings were carefully stabilized by human medics. "What have we gotten ourselves into?" Outside, a human child ran laughing through the rain, playing in weather that was slowly killing some of the galaxy's most advanced beings. Admiral Tkan closed his eyes and tried not to think about what the humans' military capabilities might actually represent if this was what their children considered entertainment. The halfway house, as Sarah had called it, turned out to be a sprawling complex built into a mountainside. Its architecture a disturbing blend of advanced engineering and what could only be described as fortress design. As their transport approached through what the humans casually referred to as light seismic activity, the galactic visitors got their first real look at Earth's idea of accommodation for foreign dignitaries. "That's not a research facility," Commander Vorth observed, his military experience reading the defensive positions built into the mountain face. "That's a hardened military installation." Dr. Sarah Martinez, as they'd learned her name was, laughed from the driver's seat. "Oh, that old thing? It used to be NORAD, North American Aerospace Defense Command. We repurposed it when we started getting regular visitors from off-world." She navigated around a boulder that had tumbled across the road while she was speaking, treating the multi-ton obstacle as a minor traffic inconvenience. Turns out most galactic species need serious protection from our environment, so we figured, why not use something that was already built to survive nuclear war? The transport passed through multiple airlock systems, each one scanning them with sensors that seemed oddly sophisticated for a primitive species. Professor Sci-Fi, despite his failing biosuit systems, couldn't help but notice the technology patterns. These sensor arrays, he wheezed to Admiral Khan. They're not just advanced, they're specifically designed to analyze non-terrestrial biochemistry. How long have humans been expecting galactic contact? Khan was beginning to suspect the answer to that question was longer than their intelligence had suggested. The interior of the facility was a revelation that challenged everything the Galactic Consortium thought they knew about human development. The corridors were vast, designed to accommodate species much larger than humans, with adjustable atmospheric controls, variable gravity fields, and what appeared to be quantum-stable medical equipment that rivaled anything in their own ship's sickbay. How many species have visited Earth? Dr. Creason asked as they were wheeled through halls lined with what looked suspiciously like memorials. "You're the 47th expedition in the last standard galactic year," replied Dr. James Chen, the human male who had assisted in their rescue. "Though you're the first one from the Andromedian Institute. Most of the others were military reconnaissance or resource assessment teams." A chill ran through the expedition members that had nothing to do with their failing life support systems. Military reconnaissance? Khan's voice came out as barely a whisper. Sarah and James exchanged a look that spoke volumes about conversations the galactic visitors weren't privy to. "Let's get your people stable first," Sarah said diplomatically. "Then we can talk about the bigger picture." The medical bay was a marvel of adaptive engineering. Each bed could be configured for different atmospheric requirements, gravity levels, and biochemical needs. But what struck the visitors most was the evidence of extensive use, where patterns, upgraded systems, and maintenance logs that suggested this facility had been treating galactic casualties for years. Dr. Lyss Andra was placed in a specialized atmospheric chamber that somehow recreated the specific pressure and gravity conditions of Proxima B's gas giant environment. The technology required to build such a system should have been beyond human capabilities, yet here it was, functioning perfectly. "Your friend should stabilize once her system adjusts," Sarah explained while monitoring readouts that showed biological data the humans shouldn't have been able to interpret. Gas giant physiology is tricky in high-gravity environments, but we've gotten pretty good at managing the transition. "How do you know so much about our biology?" Sci-Fi demanded. His xenobiological training recognizing the level of expertise Sarah was demonstrating. "Practice," James answered simply. "Lots and lots of practice." As their biosuits were replaced by human-designed life support systems, the expedition members began to grasp the true scope of what they'd stumbled into. The humans weren't just capable of treating galactic species, they were experts at it. This facility represented years, possibly decades, of accumulated experience dealing with the inevitable casualties of their planet's hostile environment. "We need to contact our ship," Admiral Khan insisted, as human medics worked on his failing cybernetic systems with a competence that suggested they'd seen his model before. "Already tried," Sarah replied, checking a readout that showed local electromagnetic conditions. "Another solar storm just started. Your ship's communication systems won't penetrate the interference for at least 72 hours. Solar storm. Dr. Mothera's gossamer form was suspended in a low-gravity field that allowed her damaged wings to heal without the stress of Earth's crushing atmospheric pressure. "How do you function with such regular stellar interference?" "Same way we function with everything else," James shrugged. "We adapt." Over the next several days, as their bodies slowly adjusted to Earth conditions with the help of human medical technology, The expedition members began to understand the true nature of their situation. Through the facility's heavily shielded windows, they could observe Earth's surface weather patterns, geological activity, and ecosystem behaviors. What they saw redefined their understanding of the term hostile environment. A typical day included temperature swings that would require emergency protocols on most civilized worlds, atmospheric pressure variations that would collapse standard buildings, and electromagnetic fluctuations that would cripple advanced technology. Yet Earth's biosphere not only survived these conditions, it thrived. Look at this. HFY called his colleagues over to a monitoring station where he'd been studying local wildlife. These creatures they call bears. Average mass of 300 kilograms, bone density 3 times galactic standard, cardiovascular system capable of functioning at pressure levels that would kill most spacefaring species. On the screen, a brown bear was casually fishing in a river, while what humans called a minor earthquake shook the ground around it. The creature's only response was to adjust its footing and continue hunting. And that's considered one of their smaller predators, James mentioned, bringing them meals designed for their specific dietary requirements. Wait until you see the ocean life. Ocean life. Commander Vorth looked up from the human combat manual he'd been studying with growing unease. You have aquatic predators? Blue whales can reach 30 meters in length and weigh 200 tons, Sarah explained casually. But they're filter feeders. The great white sharks are the ones you really need to watch out for in the water. She showed them footage of a creature that moved through Earth's oceans with the grace and power of a living missile, its bite force measuring in tons per square inch, hunting in an environment where the pressure alone would crush most starships. How are these creatures not your apex predators? Dr. Creason asked in fascination and horror. Because, James replied with a smile that was becoming increasingly unsettling, they haven't learned to use tools yet. The implications of that statement hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Your species, Tkan said slowly, evolved alongside these predators? Evolved alongside them, learned to hunt them, learned to survive them, and eventually learned to dominate them, Sarah confirmed. Earth doesn't produce weaklings, Admiral. It produces survivors. And the top of the survival chain on this planet is us. Through the facility's communication system, they began monitoring human news broadcasts, trying to understand the scope of the civilization they'd underestimated. What they found challenged every assumption about technological development patterns. Humans had not just achieved faster-than-light communication, they'd weaponized it. Their military forces weren't the primitive chemical propellant forces that galactic intelligence had reported. Those were their police forces. Their actual military represented generations of technological development driven by the need to survive on a planet that treated galactic standard disasters as weather patterns. This can't be right, Vorth muttered, studying human military specifications that showed kinetic weapons capable of accelerating projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. These power requirements, the engineering tolerances, this technology should be impossible without access to galactic manufacturing techniques. Unless, HFY said quietly, you developed it yourself because you needed it to survive here. The expedition's communication with their ship, when it was finally restored after the solar storm passed, brought news that confirmed their worst fears. Captain Ainara's voice crackled through the quantum-encrypted channel. Admiral, we've been monitoring local space traffic. There are human vessels moving through the outer system, not just exploration craft, but what appear to be military patrol ships. Their technology signatures are unexpected. How unexpected? Tkan asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. They're using quantum-coherent propulsion systems, Admiral. Full-spectrum electromagnetic shielding. Weapon signatures that suggest particle beam arrays and kinetic bombardment capabilities. The medical bay fell silent except for the hum of life support systems, keeping the expedition alive in Earth's hostile environment. Captain, Tkan said carefully, what's the tactical assessment of their capabilities? The pause before the answer told them everything they needed to know. Admiral, if these readings are accurate, human military technology is approximately equivalent to galactic consortium military standards, possibly superior in some areas. Dr. Mathera's gossamer form trembled in its protective field. That's impossible. They're a pre-contact species. They shouldn't have access to quantum coherent technologies. Sarah, who had been quietly monitoring their conversation, spoke up. Who said we didn't have access to quantum coherent technologies? Every eye in the medical bay turned to her. Dr. Martinez, Admiral Khan said slowly, exactly how long has your species been aware of galactic civilization? Sarah exchanged another one of those meaningful looks with James before answering. About as long as galactic civilization has been aware of us, Admiral. The difference is we've been paying attention. The revelation hit them like a physical blow. Earth wasn't a primitive world stumbling toward galactic contact. Earth was a fortress world that had been quietly watching galactic civilization for decades, maybe centuries, developing countermeasures and preparing for the inevitable moment when the galaxy decided to pay attention to the little blue planet. The Galactic Consortium has been monitoring Earth for over 200 years, Khan protested. Our surveys showed a primitive species just beginning to develop industrial technology. Your surveys showed exactly what we wanted them to show, James replied. Earth has been a member of several galactic intelligence networks for longer than most species have been spacefaring. We've just preferred to maintain observer status rather than participant status. Until now, Sarah added ominously. What's changed? Zexai asked, though his xenobiological training was already providing disturbing answers. The consortium has moved from observation to action, James explained. Military reconnaissance teams, resource assessment surveys, cultural integration studies. Your people aren't just watching us anymore, you're planning for us. Through the facility's communication systems, they could hear the background chatter of human military coordination, encrypted transmissions that spoke of fleet movements, defensive preparations, and something called Protocol 7. That made the human staff exchange nervous glances. Admiral, Captain Ninera's voice crackled through their communicator again. We're detecting significant military buildup in local space. Human vessels are taking positions throughout the system. They appear to be surrounding us. The medical bay's atmospheric recycling systems seem to grow louder in the sudden silence. Dr. Martinez, Khan said very carefully, are we prisoners? Sarah's smile was gentle, professional, and absolutely terrifying. Admiral, your guests. Very special guests who have given us invaluable intelligence about consortium capabilities, technologies, and intentions. She gestured around the medical facility that was keeping them alive. This isn't a prison, it's a research facility. And you've been the most cooperative test subjects we've ever had. The horrifying realization dawned on them slowly. Every bioscan, every medical treatment, every life support adjustment had been carefully monitored and recorded. The humans hadn't just been treating their injuries. They'd been studying their biology, their technology, their capabilities. How long have you been planning this? Dr. Kree's son whispered. Planning what? James asked innocently. Planning to provide medical assistance to galactic visitors who underestimated our environment, planning to defend ourselves against what our intelligence networks indicate is an imminent consortium invasion, planning to survive. He gestured toward the windows, where Earth's hostile environment continued its daily assault on anything that dared to live on its surface. Admiral, your people made a fundamental error in judgment. You assumed that because we were young, we were weak. You assumed that because our planet looked habitable from space, it was safe to visit. You assumed that because we hadn't joined your galactic civilization, we couldn't defend ourselves against it. Sarah picked up the thread. What you didn't realize is that Earth doesn't produce species that assume anything about survival. Earth produces species that prepare for everything, Plan for every contingency and never, ever underestimate the competition. Outside, the sound of human aircraft could be heard conducting what were obviously military exercises, their engines producing power signatures that registered as small fusion reactors on the expedition sensors. "We're not primitive, Admiral," Sarah continued. "We're not underdeveloped. We're not defenseless. We're Earthers. And Earth doesn't make anything that can't survive a fight." The communication system crackled to life with Captain Ninera's increasingly desperate voice. "Admiral, human vessels are hailing us. They're requesting our surrender." In the medical bay, surrounded by human technology that was keeping them alive while simultaneously studying their every biological function, the expedition members finally understood the true nature of their situation. They hadn't discovered a primitive species ready for galactic contact. They had stumbled into a trap set by apex predators who had been planning for this moment since the first galactic survey ship had entered their star system. And now they were about to learn exactly what it meant to be at the mercy of a species that had been forged by a planet where mercy was a luxury that got you killed. The human facility's main conference room was designed like everything else on Earth, to accommodate species that had never learned to expect easy survival. The walls were reinforced against seismic activity, the atmospheric systems could handle chemical weapons, and the furniture was built to support beings whose biology had been forged by hostile environments. Admiral Khan, despite his failing biosuit and the human life support systems keeping him functional, tried to maintain some semblance of diplomatic authority as he faced the human delegation across the conference table. But it was hard to project galactic superiority when your species needed medical assistance just to breathe the local air. "Admiral Khan," said Director Elizabeth Hayes, the human official who apparently spoke for Earth's government in matters of galactic relations. "Thank you for accepting our invitation to discuss the current situation." The phrase "invitation to discuss" would have been diplomatic language in any other context. Here, surrounded by beings whose children played in whether that could kill galactic military officers, it sounded more like the polite fiction it was. "Director Hayes," Khan replied, his translator struggling with the atmospheric interference that humans seemed to ignore entirely. "The Galactic Consortium demands the immediate release of our expedition and our vessel." Hayes smiled with the same predatory friendliness they'd seen from all the humans. "Demands, Admiral? That's an interesting choice of words from someone whose ship is currently surrounded by our defense fleet." Through the conference room's windows, they could see the truth of that statement. Human vessels moved through local space with a coordination and capability that redefined everything they thought they knew about primitive species. The ships themselves looked nothing like the crude chemical propellant craft that galactic intelligence had reported. These were sleek, deadly-looking vessels that radiated the kind of technological sophistication that took most species millennia to develop. "Your intelligence was flawed, Admiral," said General Patricia Cross, the human military officer whose presence at this diplomatic meeting sent its own message. "But then, that was intentional on our part." Professor Zexai, despite his oxygen dependency and the human medical equipment keeping his biology functional, couldn't resist asking the xenobiologist's question. "How long have you been deceiving galactic surveillance?" "Since the first survey probe entered our system in 2157, Hayes replied matter-of-factly. "We've been aware of galactic civilization for over 200 years, Admiral. We've just been very careful about what we allowed you to see." Commander Vorth, his combat experience finally recognizing the true nature of their situation, spoke up. "The primitive chemical weapons, the crude metallurgy, the limited space presence, all of it was theater." "Not theater," General Cross corrected. "Camouflage. When you're facing potential enemies with superior numbers and established infrastructure, you don't reveal your capabilities until you're ready to use them." Dr. Mothera, suspended in her low-gravity field and still recovering from injuries that Earth's environment had inflicted simply by existing, whispered. You've been preparing for war. We've been preparing for survival, Hayes replied. Same thing, from an Earth perspective. The humans activated a holographic display that showed the solar system from a tactical perspective. What the expedition saw redefined their understanding of human capabilities. Hidden installations throughout the asteroid belt, defensive platforms disguised as space debris, manufacturing facilities built into moons that galactic surveys had dismissed as uninhabitable rocks. Earth's industrial capacity, General Cross explained, is approximately 50 times what your intelligence estimated. Our population is distributed across 73 installations throughout the solar system, all designed to survive direct assault from galactic standard weapons. That's impossible, Dr. Kreesun protested. The energy requirements alone for that level of industrial development would create signatures visible from light years away. Only if you don't know how to hide them, Hayes replied. Earth's environment taught us very early that survival often depends on not being noticed by things that can kill you. We applied that lesson to galactic relations. Admiral Khan was beginning to understand the true scope of the intelligence failure that had brought them here. The consortium has been planning a peaceful integration mission, cultural exchange, technology sharing, gradual introduction to galactic civilization. Peaceful integration, General Cross repeated, her tone suggesting she found the phrase amusing. Under consortium authority, following consortium law, using consortium technology, and serving consortium interests. That's how galactic civilization works, Khan protested. Advanced species guide developing species toward enlightenment and prosperity. Advanced species, Hayes said quietly, guide developing species toward servitude and resource extraction. We've been monitoring consortium activities for 2 centuries, Admiral. We know exactly what your peaceful integration looks like. The holographic display shifted to show other star systems, other worlds that had undergone consortium integration. The pattern was always the same: initial contact, cultural exchange, gradual technological dependence, then economic and political absorption into the larger galactic structure. Your species maintains independence only as long as you're useful, General Cross continued. Once your resources are extracted and your population integrated, you become another consortium member world, following consortium law and serving consortium interests. That's how civilization advances, Dr. Mothera said weakly. Unity, cooperation, shared progress. Shared progress. James Chen's voice came from behind them.